A very good afternoon. I'm Priyadarshini from the Zoho Books team. So we all know that GST came into picture in the year of 2017 and we have been filing monthly or quarterly returns. So in today's session, we will be focusing about the GSTR-2A and 2B reconciliations from Zoho Books. Let's see the process and how Zoho Books helps you out with it. In today's session, we'll be talking about the GSTR-2A and 2B reconciliations from Zoho Books. So the agenda for the day will be, we'll discuss what is GSTR-2A, what are the components of this GSTR-2A, how it's being derived, and then we will move on to GSTR-2B. We will have a quick run through of GSTR-2B, how it can be viewed in the GST portal. And then we'll move to the most important part, how to reconcile GSTR-2 and 2B from Zoho Books. Then we will touch upon some of the frequently asked questions. And we'll have a quick recap and wind up with the question and answer session. Now let's discuss what is GSTR-2A. So GSTR-2A is an auto-drafted inward supply statement which is filed by your supplier. So this statement is generated in the GST portal. So we all file our GSTR-1 returns and 3B returns, right? So GSTR-1 is basically an outward supply return wherein you file all of your sales transactions. So your suppliers will file their sales transactions. From that, the government portal fetches it and drafts it into an inward supply summary for you. So this is the GSTR-2A. What are the components from where this GSTR-2A is being derived, from which returns? So basically this is derived from the GSTR-1 and 5, and what are the transactions fetched here would be invoices, credit and debit notes. The input service distributor details will be available from the GSTR-6 filing. The details of the TDS and TCS credit will be available from the GSTR-7 and 8. And then your import of goods and services, overseas vendors and also SEZ vendors will be fetched from the IceGate portal of Indian Customs. As I already mentioned, this is a read-only form. You will not be able to make any changes. It is auto-drafted by the GST portal itself based on the returns which we discussed earlier. If you would like to view these returns in the GST portal, all you have to do is log into the GST portal, click on Returns under the Services dropdown, and then hit the Returns dashboard. You can select the required financial year, the month or quarter for which you wish to view, and hit Search. Now, all the GSTR returns will be listed. There, you will be able to find the auto-drafted details of GSTR-2A, and it is only for a view purpose. You can either view it or download it. Once I click on View, the GSTR-2A components will be listed in 4 parts, Part A, B, C and D. And the various returns which we discussed earlier, like the GSTR-1-5, the GSTR-6, GSTR-7 and 8, and also the import of goods from the IceGate portal will be bifurcated among these 4 parts. Let me show you. Now if you check the screenshot, the auto-drafted details are listed here. You will be able to find your basic GSTIN details, the business legal name and the trade name, the financial year for which it is being generated and the return period. Now, the details which is auto-drafted is available in 4 parts. The data fetched from your GSTR-1 and 5 returns, that is your B2B invoices, credit or debit notes, and the amendments related to it. If you have done any changes after the filing period, you will be able to find these in the Part A. Next up, we have the ISD credits, that is your input service distributor credits, which is fetched from your GSTR-6. So this ISD credit details and the amendments to these credits will be available in the Part B. Part C comprises of your TDS and TCS credits, which is fetched from the GSTR-7 and 8, and any amendments pertaining to it would be listed in Part C. Lastly, in the Part D, the import of your goods, that is whatever transactions you have done with your overseas vendor, will be available in the Part D. Along with that, all the import of goods, whatever you have done from a special economic zone developer or a special economic zone vendor, will be listed in the Part D section. This data is basically fetched from the bill of entry through the IceGate portal of Indian Customs. We just had a look of what is GSTR-2A, what are the components pertaining to GSTR-2A and how it can be viewed in the portal. Now let's quickly see what is GSTR-2B. So GSTR-2B is again an inward supply auto-drafted statement only, but the difference here is it is an auto-drafted ITC statement. So what is ITC? Before we go into GSTR-2B, let me explain what ITC is all about. ITC is your input tax credits which you can claim from the government. So why we claim ITC? Because let's assume that you purchase certain goods from your vendor with a tax imposition. So you have already paid some tax, some percentage of tax to your vendors. Later, when you sell these products with a higher margin to your customers, again you collect some percentage of tax from your customers and pay it to the government. So what happens here is, for the same item, you are again paying overlay of taxes. So in order to claim this, we have the ITC. Let me explain this with a simple example. Let's assume you are purchasing an item for 1000 rupees from a vendor with 10% tax. So you have already paid 100 rupees to the government. Now again you sell this item for 2000 rupees with again the same percentage of tax, wherein you pay again 200 to the government. So what happens here is, for the same item, instead of paying 100, you have already paid 300 rupees. So this 100 rupees which you have already paid to your vendor can be claimed as ITC. So this GSTR-2B is an auto-drafted ITC statement which will list all the transactions pertaining to which the ITC can be claimed. Now what are the returns, or what are the factors in which this GSTR-2B is considered is? First is your GSTR-1 and 5. So this ITC available will be consolidated from your GSTR-1 and 5 and GSTR-6 returns. In addition to it, all the transactions made with your overseas vendor will be received from the IceGate portal, and also the ITC available to the registered vendor. So whatever purchases you have done from a registered vendor and an input service distributor will also be listed. Now let's quickly see how we can view this return in the GST portal. Log into the GST portal and click on Services drop down. There you will find the returns and then click on Returns dashboard. Select the required period for which you would like to view the return, and you will be able to find the auto-drafted ITC statement for the required month. You can either view it or download it. So once you click on View, you will be able to view this particular page, wherein it is divided into two parts: Summary and All Tables. Summary again is bifurcated as ITC available and ITC not available. So summary gives you an overall view and overall value pertaining to different parts, and all tables give you the detailed view of all the transactions. So here in the ITC available, you can see various parts being listed and the various various transactions corresponding to it. So the first thing is your B2B invoices, that is whatever transactions are eligible for ITC for the inward supplies from your registered persons. So the invoices, debit notes and amendments pertaining to the invoices and debit notes can be seen. In part 2, you can find the inward supplies from your input service distributor. Part 3, you can find the transactions which are liable for reverse charge. So basically what you do is, whenever you purchase any material, you pay the item price along with the taxes to your vendor, and he later pays it to the government. Reverse charge is the case where for whatever purchase you have done, you directly make the tax payment to the government and not the vendor. So that is the reverse charge. So whatever inward supplies which are liable to reverse charge will be listed in part 3, and also the import of goods which is fetched from the IceGate portal. In all tables, you will be able to find all these detailed information, that is transaction wise information. You can click on any table to view it. For example, if you would like to view the invoices, that is your purchase invoices received from B2B vendors, you can refer the first one. Taxable inward supplies received from a registered person, B2B. Or if you wish to view the credit notes, you can view the debit or credit notes original, B2B. If you wish to view the amendments, you can refer the fourth table, amendment to previously filed credit or debit notes by the supplier. So these details can be viewed in detail by clicking on any of these tables. Now we saw what is GSTR-2A, what is GSTR-2B, what are the components and how it can be viewed in the portal. Now let's dive into the process of reconciling GSTR-2A and 2B from Zoho Books. So the first and foremost step is to set up your GST settings in Zoho Books. Let me show you. Once you log into Zoho Books, you need to click on Settings, Taxes. Here you will be able to update your GSTIN settings like your GST number, the business legal name, the business trade name, the date on which your GST was registered on, and other options like reverse charge. If your business is involved in import or export, you can check this. You can also select the custom duty tracking account here. If you're into digital services, you can check this box as well. Next up, the most important part if you wish to reconcile or file the returns from Zoho Books is your online filing settings. Only if this settings is enabled, you will be able to reconcile transactions from Zoho Books. So the first step here is to enter your GST and username. Some customers tend to update the GST number here, but here the GST username has to be updated. Whatever credentials you're using in the GST portal has to be updated here. Next is your reporting period. You can select monthly or quarterly based on the returns you're filing. And if you are in the QRMP scheme, that is quarterly returns filing and monthly payment of taxes, you can enable this option. Next is the generate first tax return from. So whenever you have started using Zoho Books and started filing returns from Zoho Books, you can select that particular month. And lastly, you can enable the approval process. This is an internal approval process enabled to check if all the transactions are correctly being pushed to the GST portal. This has no relevance with GSTR-2A and 2B reconciliations. However, this will be helpful when you file your returns for GSTR-1 or 3B from Zoho Books. You can select a maximum of 5 approvers and you can save this. Now, the basic setup in Zoho Books is already done. Now, let's talk about the setup which has to be done in the GST portal. As we all know, Zoho is a registered GSP. So we need to enable the API access in the GST portal in order to facilitate the reconciliation process. Log into your GST portal and then click on My Profile, which is on the top right corner. Now you will find your details and then you can click on Quick Links tab and then click on Manage API Access. Please select Yes under Enable API Request. You can select the duration from the list of duration available here and click Confirm. After the selected duration, the API access is disabled and you need to enable the API access again if you want to reconcile or file the returns from Zoho Books. Now the basic setup in Zoho Books and the GST portal is completed. Now let's see how we can reconcile the transactions in Zoho Books. We have the GST filing module wherein you will be able to view the various returns. Here you can find the list of GST numbers that you have enabled in your organization. So whatever GSTINs you have added in your organization will be listed here. So we might have multiple branches, right? So if you have GSTIN for each branch, then all of the GSTIN will be listed. If you have multiple branches for a single GST number, then the consolidated return will be filed for the particular GSTIN only. So the GST returns are based on your GSTIN and not on the branches. So here you can see that since I have enabled the online filing settings, view summary option is available. For the other GSTINs, I have not enabled the online filing settings and hence enable GST filing option is being listed here. Once I click on view summary, it will take me to the returns page. Here I will be able to find the various monthly or quarterly returns which is available in Zoho Books. And we can find the GSTR-2 here. So previously when GST came into picture, GSTR-2 returns were supposed to be filed by us also in the GST portal. However, this was repealed in 2017 itself, September 2017. And right now we can just reconcile the transactions using the GST portal values. So here whatever transactions I have created for the corresponding period is listed as all transactions and uncategorized. You can click on categorize now to categorize these transactions and then you can mark it as completed. Once I click on all transactions, there are 3 tabs available here: the overview, reconciliations and complete your return. In the overview page, you will be able to find the summary of the various transactions created. First is the B2B invoices. Whatever supplies, inward supplies you have from the registered vendors will be available here, and also this will not contain the transactions which you have done from the composition vendors. Second, you have B2B unregistered invoices, that is whatever bills or expenses you have created from your unregistered vendors which has reverse charge applicability will be available here. Next is your credit notes and debit notes, which is again bifurcated for registered vendors and unregistered vendors, which attracts a reverse charge. Next is your import of goods or capital goods. So this bill of entries, whatever you have created for importing of goods from an overseas vendor will be available here. Next is your import of services. Whatever services you have got from an overseas vendor, the cumulative value will be displayed here. Next is your nil rated invoices, that is whatever expenses or bills you have created with 0% tax will be listed here. Finally, the HSN or SAC summary. So whatever items or services you have purchased, the corresponding HSN and SAC wise summary will be available here. As you can see, we have this tip wherein you can place your cursor to view what are the transactions which will be pertaining to each of these headers. Next, we have the reconciliations. You can select the reconciliation period for which you want to reconcile the transactions. Once it is done, you need to click on Pull from GSTN. Once I click on Pull from GSTN, an OTP will be sent to your registered mobile number. That is your GST registered mobile number. You need to enter it. Since we are in a sandbox environment, it is not asking for any OTP. However, in real time, you need to enter the OTP and then the transactions will be pulled from the GSTN portal. Once the transactions are pulled, it is listed here in 4 tabs, that is missing in GSTN, missing in Zoho Books, partially matched and matched. So how is this being classified into 4 categories? What is the criteria here? So the 5 criteria which is checked here is your vendor GSTIN, the vendor bill number, the bill date, the taxable amount and the tax amount. These are the 5 points on which the comparison is being done and wherein it is listed in 4 different tabs. Now let's look into each one of them. Missing in GSTN basically means you have created these transactions in your Zoho Books organization, but they are not available in the GST portal. When will this case occur is that when your vendor has not filed their GST returns. So this could also be a reason where there could also be a reason where the vendor is in quarterly filing but you are in a monthly filing, so you reconcile the transactions monthly. So you can just ignore these missing in GSTN because at the end of the quarter when the vendor files it, you can again reconcile them. You can just skip these for now and you can mark your return as completed. So these transactions will be carried forward to the subsequent months. So in the actions, if you want to just reconcile it right away, you can just click on Add to GSTN. So these transactions will move to the Reconciled tab. So since I have clicked on Add to GSTN, it has moved directly to the Reconcile tab and I can directly reconcile it. Or if you wish to reverse it, you can click on Revert Reconciliation. If you click on Add to GSTN, this will not add it to the GST portal, but it will move only it to the Reconcile tab for the internal reconciliation purpose. So next we have the missing in Zoho Books. Missing in Zoho Books means this transaction is available in the GST portal, but you have not yet created this transaction here in Zoho Books. So those transactions will be available here. You can either create a new transaction and match it, or you can reject it. Once you reject it, this transaction will just be moved to the Reconcile tab. It will be rejected in Zoho Books, but in GST portal there will be no changes. Since GSTR-2 is only a view-only form, you cannot make any alterations there. Or you can mark it as pending so that this transaction will be carried forward to the subsequent months. Next is your partially matched tab. In partially matched tab, the three conditions will match perfectly. That is your vendor GSTIN, the bill number, and also the bill date. All these details will match perfectly, but there could be a minor variation either in the taxable amount or the tax amount. So here in this case, I can see the transaction whatever I have created in Zoho Books has a taxable amount of 101, and the taxable amount which was fetched from the GSTN portal was 100. That is the reason for the mismatch. If I wish to edit this transaction, I can directly click on this. I will be redirected to the corresponding transaction wherein I can check the tax summary and update my values accordingly. Or you can simply accept this as it is. You need not make any changes so that it will move to the Reconcile tab. You can use your value, that is 101, instead of the GST portal's value. Or you can modify it, that is you can edit your transactions and match it. Or you can mark it as pending so that you can reconcile it in the subsequent months. And lastly, the match tab. So if all the 5 criteria perfectly match with each other, that is your vendor GST number, the bill date, the transaction number, that is your bill number, the tax amount and the taxable amount, of all these 5 criteria match perfectly, then it will be listed under the match tab. You can simply move it to the Reconcile tab. Once you have reconciled all the transactions, you can go to the Complete Your Return tab. You can mark your return as completed for this month. Once this return is marked as completed, all the transactions which was reconciled will be locked and you will not be able to make any changes pertaining to it. So now we discussed about the GSTR-2A reconciliation process. Now let's quickly run through the GSTR-2B reconciliation process from Zoho Books. So this GSTR-2B was introduced in October 2020 only. So this GSTR-2B reconciliations can be done from the month of July. In July and August, this particular return was given on a trial basis to test the customers how it will work, but it originally came only in the year 2020 October. So once you go to the GST portal, you will be able to view the returns, and in Zoho Books, when you navigate to the GST filing tab, you will find the GSTR-2B as well. Just click on Fetch Summary, wherein it will fetch the summary from the GST portal. Next, in the view return, you will have ITC available and ITC not available. So the overall summary will be there, just the values, wherein the ITC transactions based on the different criteria will be listed, and also the whatever transactions for which ITC cannot be claimed will also be available. Next, you will have the Reconciliations tab. So here you can view it by all or ITC availability or ITC not available, and you can see there are 4 tabs like just we saw in GSTR-2A, missing in GSTN, missing in Zoho Books, partially matched and matched. The reconciliation process remains pretty similar. So it is based on the same 5 criteria, the transactions will be listed and the actions are similar. You can view only the ITC available transactions, that is ITC eligible transactions or ITC ineligible or all the transactions. You can also export this particular transactions in the form of Excel SX. So now we have had a walkthrough about what is GSTR-2A, what is GSTR-2B, and the process of reconciliation. Now let's quickly see some of the FAQs, that is frequently asked questions related to these 2 reconciliations. So the first one is there was an error while connecting to the GSTN portal. So this error might occur due to 4 reasons. The first reason is that if you have not enabled the API access in the GST portal, then this error might occur. Also, as we already discussed, please ensure to update your GST settings. So under the settings, taxes, GST settings, click on online filing settings. So here under the GSTN username, if you have updated an incorrect username or your GSTIN itself, then this error might occur. Make sure you update the GSTN username as per your GST portal only. And the third reason would be because of the period which you are trying to fetch. So the GSTR-2A will be available only after 14th of every month. Similarly, GSTR-2B as well. So if you're trying to pull the returns before those dates, in that case also this error might occur, because the GSTR1 filing comes to an end only at 13th of every month. So only after 14th you will be able to fetch these returns. So the next question is GSTR-2B is grayed out. So as we already discussed, GSTR-2B came into picture only in the year of 2020. So in this particular organization itself, you can see the generate first tax return from date is given as November 2018. However, if I go to that corresponding month, I will not be able to find the GSTR-2B. It would be grayed out. So here for the month of November 2018, the GSTR-2B is still grayed out because this came into picture only in the year October 2020. So here you will be able to fetch the summary. So for the periods before October 2020, you will not be able to reconcile the GSTR-2B. The next FAQ is GSTR-2 is grayed out. So we all know that your GSTR-2 returns can be marked as completed. So if you have not marked as completed your previous month return, in that case it will be grayed out. Now for November 2018, my generate first tax return from date is November 2018. So for the month of November 2018, the GSTR-2 is available. However, if I check it for next month, it would be grayed out because I have not marked my previous month return as completed. So please make sure to mark your previous GSTR-2A as completed so that the next month return would be fetched. In GSTR-2A or 2B, the previous data are getting populated. So if you have not reconciled the previous month, in that case, the GSTR-2A and 2B transactions will be carried forward to the next month. So always make sure to reconcile the previous month before proceeding to the next month. The next question is, I have created a bill in Zoho Books, but it is not showing in missing in GSTN or any other tab. So as we already discussed, the criteria on which this particular transactions are being reconciled is your vendor GST number, the bill number, the bill date, the taxable amount and the tax amount. If there is a mismatch in your vendor GST number or the bill number or the bill date, it will either be listed as missing in Zoho Books or missing in GSTN, or if all these match and if they have a value mismatch, that is in the taxable amount or tax amount, it will be listed under partially matched. So always make sure to check these 5 criteria so that the transactions are listed correctly. So can we modify the transactions after filing GSTR-2 in Zoho Books? So once your GSTR-2A is marked as completed, the corresponding transactions, that is your bills and expenses, would be logged. So if you want to make any changes in that particular transaction, you need to mark it as open. So in the GSTR-2 itself, instead of mark as completed, you will find an option called mark as open. So you can mark this particular return as open and then you can edit the transactions and mark it as completed again. With this, we have reached the end of the session. So let us have a quick recap of what was discussed in today's session. We learned about GSTR-2A, what are the various components from which the GSTR-2A is being derived and how we can view it in the portal. We discussed about GSTR-2B, the various components and the returns from which the GSTR-2B is derived, and then we had a deep explanation of how these transactions can be reconciled, that is your 2A and 2B can be reconciled from Zoho Books. Also, we discussed some of the frequently asked questions. So with this, we come to the end of this webinar. I hope this was a useful session. We are now open to questions. You can please post them in your questions tab. We shall be taking them and answering them shortly. So we have a question from Ms. Abhirami. We cannot reconcile the GSTR-2B from 2018 till date. So this purely depends upon the generate first tax return date you have given in your organization. In our sandbox environment, we have data entry since 2018, so we have used it. But if you have started using the GST filing feature on the later date, that is from the current year, you can always give the generate first tax return from date accordingly. So next up, we have a question. Do we have to reconcile both GSTR-2 and GSTR-2B? So as I already discussed, GSTR-2A is your inward supply. So that will have all the inward supplies whatever your vendors have filed. Whereas GSTR-2B will contain the ITC eligibility. So whatever transactions for which you can fetch the ITC, that is whatever transactions for which you can claim the ITC, that will be available in the GSTR-2B. Yes, you can reconcile both of them. It is not mandatory, but if you wish to reconcile both of them, you can very well do it. I'm not able to create a GST rate of 0% and enter that in bills. So I believe the GST 0% is already available by default in Zoho Books itself. Let me show you. So here in Zoho Books, when you go to settings, taxes, we do have a predefined set of tax rates being available. The GST 0%, that is your CGST 0% and SGST 0%, and the IGST 0% is already available in Zoho Books. So I believe you can use this tax group or taxes and associate it to transactions. So next up we have a question from Mr. Peter. Can we yearly reconcile GSTR-2B versus books? So it will not be, we will not be able to fetch the yearly return as such. You will be able to do it on monthly basis only. So next up we have a question. If GSTR-2A and B are just for overview, then in which one should we do our purchase return filing? So we do not have separate purchase return filing. The consolidated returns of your outward and inward supplies will be filed in your GSTR-3B only. So next up we have a question. After reconciliation, how will it calculate ITC for a particular month? So will the ITC be taken as per books or as per GSTR-2B? Whatever transactions you have created in Zoho Books, based on that only the ITC will be displayed in Zoho Books. However, after the reconciliation process is completed, you can adjust your ITC when you're filing the GSTR-3B. So this details will be available in the next session. And also coming to the second part, can we do reconciliation from April 2023 to November 23? You can do it on a monthly basis only. You will not be able to do it on the whole, but you can do it month on month. So next up we have a question. If I don't use Zoho for filing GSTR1, but if I want to use a GSTR2B feature, will I be able to do it? Yes, you can do your GSTR2B reconciliation alone. As far as GSTR1 is considered also, you can do your filing manually and you can just mark the return as filed in Zoho Books as well. So next up we have a question. Can we mark transactions as pending in GSTR2B reconciliation? There may be some transactions which I want to claim later. How will this reflect in GSTR2B? So whatever transactions you have not reconciled for the particular month will be carried forward to the next month. Only if you reconcile them, if it is moved to the reconcile tab, it will be considered for the particular month's reconciliation. However, if you mark it as pending, it will, you need not mark it as pending. You can just ignore it so that it will be carried forward to the subsequent months. So how to remove some transactions from missing in GSTN while reconciling the GSTR-2B? So whatever transactions are missing in GSTN, you will have an option to add to GSTN, that is directly move it to the reconcile tab. So you can just click on it and it will directly move to the reconcile tab. Or if you are not making any changes, it will be moved to the subsequent months. So you can reconcile them later. So next, is it mandatory to mark the previous month as filed if we just want to use the 2B fetch summary for filing GSTR for current month? Is there any workaround? As far as GSTR-2B is concerned, you need not mark any return as filed. You can fetch the summary and proceed the reconciliations month on month. Next, can you please show how to add a new GSTI in Zoho Books? Yes, let me show you. So once you log into Zoho Books, we have the settings option here. Click on it and click on taxes. Here you will find an option to add a new GSTIN. So this new GSTN option will be enabled once you enable branches in Zoho Books. So in the organization under settings, you will find branches. So once you click on add branch, you will find an option to add multiple GST numbers as well under taxes and compliances. So you can use this new GSTN option to add a new GST number. So next up we have a question. I'm not able to push the data from push to GSTN to file the return. So is there anything else that needs to be activated? So two things which needs to be mandatorily followed is, the first thing is enabling the online filing settings correctly in Zoho Books. So make sure that you have updated your GSTN username correctly in the online filing settings of Zoho Books. And the second step is to enable the API access in the GST portal. So ensure these two steps are done so that you will be able to push your transactions. Next up, is there an option to list purchase entries not filed by vendors? Yes, these transactions are the ones which are listed in the GSTR-2B as missing in GSTN. So whatever transactions are listed under the missing in GSTN tab means that you have created these transactions in the corresponding month. However, the vendors have not yet filed those returns. So next up we have a question. How to book reverse charge? So in Zoho Books, you can enable the reverse charge option whenever you're creating a transaction. For instance, go to purchases, bills. When you create a bill for an unregistered vendor, you will have this option of applying the reverse charge. So here I have selected a vendor for whom the GST treatment is unregistered. Now below the due date I will find the option this transaction is applicable for reverse charge. So I can just simply check this box and I can select the required tax. Next up, if a vendor issues a debit note, how do I put an entry in Zoho Books? So a vendor debit note is called a vendor credit in Zoho Books. So you can use the vendor credit module to create the debit notes which are issued by the vendor. So next up we have a question, how to record reverse charge invoices in our Zoho Books. So I presume you want to know how to record the reverse charges in the sales transactions. So if you wish to record reverse charge in sales transaction, we need to first enable the option, go to settings, taxes. For the particular GSTIN, you will find the option in the GST general settings, enable reverse charge in sales transactions. So if this option is enabled, you will be able to apply reverse charge in your sales invoices as well. So next up, if it is showing under missing in books, can be booked from reconciliation report. So if the transaction is missing in Zoho Books, it means you have not created the transaction, or the vendor GST number, the bill number or the bill date, there could be a minor mismatch. So just check these three conditions, and if you have already created the transaction, update the transaction correctly, or if the transaction is yet to be created, you can create a new transaction and match it. Next up, earlier I was manually reconciling GSTR-2B. Now I want to use Zoho. How can I migrate my pending transactions? So based on your generate first tax return from date only, you will be able to reconcile the transactions. So whatever month and year you have given there, from that month you will be able to reconcile. So next up, way to create customer credit note in Zoho Books. So the customer credit notes can be created under the sales module itself, under the module named credit notes. Let me show you. So under sales, you have an option called credit notes. Whenever you have a sales return or a post-sales discount which has to be given to your customer, you will be able to create it under this credit notes tab. Next, where is the import purchase reconciliation will be available in GSTR-2A. So as we already mentioned, the GSTR-2A comprises of the purchases whatever you have done from your overseas vendor as well. So those transactions will also be available for GSTR-2A. It will be fetched from the bill of entries whatever we have generated and from the IceGate portal of Indian Customs. So since the overseas vendor will not be filing any return, those will be fetched from the IceGate portal and it will be available in the GSTR-2A. So next, vendor has not filed GSTR-1. I'm not getting the input credit. What to do? So in this case, the vendor might be in a quarterly return and you might be reconciling the returns monthly. So until the vendor files his return, the ITC cannot be claimed. So once the vendor files the return, you can claim the ITC. So next step, can you please show where we can create vendor debit and credit notes? So the vendor debit notes are called vendor credits in Zoho Books. So you can create them under purchases and vendor credits. So for credit notes, go to purchases, bills, click on the drop down next to plus new and you can create a credit note from here. Next, how to reverse credit note in books and GST filed. So if you have already filed your GSTR return and marked it as filed in Zoho Books, the transaction will be locked. So you need to do the amendments in the GST portal, and then to update the credit note in Zoho Books, you can mark the corresponding return as unfiled, make the necessary changes and mark it as filed again. Next up are matched transactions and reconciled transactions same. If I match an invoice, will it be reconciled? So matched and reconciled are similar, which means matched transaction, all the values are perfectly matching. However, only if you move to the reconcile tab, they will be reconciled and locked. So thank you so much for your patience. We have come to the end of the session. I believe we have answered most of your queries. If you have any further queries or clarifications, please feel free to reach us out on support.india@zohobooks.com, or you can reach us on our helpline number 1800-572-6671. We have multilingual supports which are offered in the languages of English, Hindi, Tamil and Telugu. So you can reach us out on our helpline number. So I thank you all for joining this session. I hope this session was a useful one. Thank you so much.